The Scottish Socialist Party are out on the streets demanding immediate action by the newly elected government and MSPs. Action against the cost of living crisis that curses the lives of millions in Scotland. There's no excuse for poverty in a country this rich, and yet 1 million are below the poverty line. And what is the government doing? They had barely finished their oath of allegiance to the King before they announced the plan to cut up to 20,000 public sector jobs and public services in working class communities. That's an outrageous example of making the people pay a price of profiteering, making working class people pay the price of a crisis not of their making. The excuse to give is that there's a black hole in Scottish Government finances of nearly £5 billion 3 years hence, 2029. Well, the Scottish Socialist Party have a few proposals of how they could fill that black hole, not fill the pockets of the rich, but actually invest in people. For starters, the government don't need any extra powers whatsoever to introduce a bill to abolish the council tax. If they abolished the council tax and replaced it with the SSP's Scottish service tax, based on last year's figures, that in 1 year would raise an additional £2.6 billion. There's half the black hole filled already in 1 year. If they did that, 8 out of 10 people would pay less, the rich would pay far more, people would be better off, and instead of cutting services, they could create services, they could create jobs and enrich the lives of working class people. Another step they could take, they say they want to devolve the power over public energy. But why do the SNP want to do that? Well, actually, when you read between the lines, they want to do it to scrap the windfall tax on multi-millionaire, multinational energy companies. Well, yes, let's devolve power over energy, but not to do that, but to nationalise it and to bring in a people's energy service that would slash bills and allow for rapid transition to green energy production and create 70,000 jobs. The Scottish Socialist Party also is demanding that the MSPs get off their backsides and immediately introduce a £15 minimum wage for everybody from the age of 16 upwards. And actually, at the minute, almost half of Scotland's 2.5 million workers earn less than a £15 an hour wage. So there's a way to transform lives and improve services instead of cutting things. And on top of that, we're demanding that they build 100,000 council houses, quality council houses, for affordable rent. And research has shown that that would create 150,000 jobs and put £55 billion into the economy in just 1 year. That's the way to do things, instead of making working class people pay for the crisis that they did not create. And I'll lastly say this, the recent Rich List, the Sunday Times Rich List, confirmed what the Scottish Socialist Party had the audacity to highlight and the foresight to highlight during the election campaign, that there's 10 people in Scotland who have combined personal wealth of nearly £24 billion. If you had a 5% wealth tax on those 10 people alone, it would raise £1.2 billion to invest in people instead of the profiteers and the millionaires that hoard wealth. So the Scottish Socialist Party had the foresight, the audacity and the principle to demand a socialist action plan during the elections. But for us, there's a clear and simple message. The saying goes, pets are not just for Christmas. Well, election manifestos should not just be for election campaigns. They should be for implementation of the election. And we're demanding an action plan to be implemented to invest in people and their postcodes and not in the rich and their profits. The Scottish Socialist Party will continue to put pressure on the MSPs to demand this action to tackle the cost of living crisis and tackle the cost of profiteering crisis, the cost of capitalism. We demand socialist action, not a tax on the working class.